Okay, the big day has arrived. I've been working on the Scott a little bit, mostly on the speaker because the owner wants this thing done, and it's already going to take until the end of January. So I started hitting the speaker, but I'm now hitting the amplifier, and I thought now is a good time to start the video series. Now I started this work some time ago. I worked on it off and on. And it kind of jumped into my queue. If I were to put it in my queue where things normally have landed when this thing came to me, it would not be done until sometime in July. But I have a pretty good relationship with the fellow who farmed this out to me. He runs a furniture refinishing studio, and he asked me to get this one done as soon as I could. And so, like I said, I've worked with him a lot. I have a good relationship with him, and I wanted to move him up the queue a bit. So here we go. This is a Scott 800B. This particular one was built in 1947. This is a huge radio, and it's actually not just a radio, but as radios go, this is a huge setup. This thing has broadcast, it has shortwave, and it has FM. And it has the newer FM, of course, being in 1947. I think this model was built up till around 1950, but I don't know that for sure. This is built by Scott Radio Laboratories. This is not a pre-war Scott. Those are the ones that everybody is gaga for, but believe me, sooner or later, people will go gaga for these as well. This is a really nice machine. These sound fantastic. I pulled this from the cabinet myself, and I wanted to give you a first look. All right, so here's the dial. Like I said, it has broadcast, shortwave, and FM. It also has inputs for phono and TV. Here are the controls. And we're going to get into the details of this thing a lot more as we go. But it has, obviously, like the band switch, you can see phono and television. Treble control, sensitivity for the radio. We have broadcast shortwave, so you select the radio once you've chosen radio. The bass control and the volume control. This here, of course, is the tuning control. The knob is a chrome-plated knob that needs some work, so I've got it off and I was looking at it trying to figure out what to do with it. So I will show you that later. This is a chrome-plated chassis. This was a rather high-end radio when it was new. And I have hinted with my YouTube videos that this was going to require quite a bit of work. There was a lot of corrosion and deterioration on the chassis. The owner of this radio is really not up for rechroming. The amount of work that it will take to rechrome this is phenomenal. So the owner really doesn't want to do that, but has asked me to do the best I can to make it look good. What's going to happen on this one, I think that I can rub out most of the corrosion, make it look decent, and then put some wax on it and prevent the corrosion from coming back right away. Some things I will have to deal with coatings, like stainless steel paint and so forth. We'll talk about that in a bit. So here we go. It's got two tuning eyes, and it has electric, motorized, and obviously motorized tuning for the presets. We're going to talk about that as we go. I'm just giving you a first real cursory tour of this thing because there's really too much there for me to make a long video of the first look. I just want to document what it looks like when I first started hitting it, and I want you to see what the 800B is like. It's a big machine. This big wheel, this disc here, is part of the presets. I am not yet familiar with it. I know the presets were set from this side of that disc. I will sort all of that out when I get to working on it. I've got a lot of research to do. It's part of the fun. And I've forgotten what this can is. I've forgotten, but if I remember right, it has something to do with the FM. I just don't recall what it is. So I'll sort it out. There's the nameplate. Scott Radio Laboratories. You see there's some of the connectors. Most of these wiring harnesses are really pretty brittle. I'm going to look at them. If they don't have to be rewired, great. If they do, I'll do it. Here, this chassis slides out toward the front, so you can actually look at the chassis while you're playing it, hence the chrome plating and the pretty design of it. So this part of the radio has to be made to look as nice as I can. I'll do my best, but you see there's some rather significant corrosion there. This here is, you know, is the tuner section. There's some significant corrosion in there on that surface, so I'll have to remove that and see what I can do about it. The top is not too terrible. I think I can cope with that. I may wind up maybe spraying this with some stainless steel paint on the sides. I don't know. I think the owner is going to be fine with that. I'm going to do a sample can and send it to the studio that I'm working for and have them assess it and see what they want to do. Here's the back of the tuning dial. Here are the back of the push buttons. Push buttons are kind of an odd push button. They're clear and they're set up in a strange way, so I've got to sort them out. They're really beautiful, but they're going to be different. All right, so that's the top side of the tuner chassis, the tuner and the preamp chassis. So let's take a look at the amplifier chassis now. Okay, here's a look at that amplifier. As you can see, the amplifier has significantly greater corrosion than the tuner does. The transformer and choke cans have pretty good amount of corrosion on them as well. Some of these can be polished up. That I will do. Of course, the transformer can be painted, so that's okay. That's going to be okay. This is the problem here, is this really can't be painted. And, I mean, it can't be painted. I'm sorry, this really can't be replated because of the amount of work and the money it would cost to do that. It can be cleaned up and repainted. The chrome is not going to be too easy to clean up. So I might be able to do it in sections. In other words, I'll clean up the top section. I'll paint a border around the transformer to cover this here. And then I will polish this chrome and wax it the best I can. It just depends on how, as I look deeper, how much I find. But you see, there's quite a bit of rust in here. Some of that is dusty, but some of it is rust. So you see right here, that's rust. And these cans are pretty bad. So these cans will have to be painted. There's no two ways about that. What I'll do is I'll strip all this chrome plating off. It won't be too difficult from the looks of it. Till I get metal. And then I will prime these. I'll etch them, prime them, and spray them with some stainless steel paint, which is really good stuff. It's not going to be shiny like the chrome. It's not going to have that same look, but it will look very clean, very tidy, and it will look pretty vintage. That Steelite does a good job. I think from looking at this, this is more dust than I realized at first. This might be okay. I think I'm going to get away with a lot here, except a border around this transformer. So, yeah, that's going to be all right. These, of course, these transformer cans, and there's a choke can. One of these is a choke can. These, of course, are going to have to be polished really, really hard and live with the pitting or painted. And I got a feeling it would be better to just live with the pitting. We want to paint as little as possible because these things are known for their chrome plating. But you see some of these cans, already the chrome is shot. It's gone. It's all the way gone. I mean, these things, when they were new, everything was chrome plated. Everything. So, okay, so there you go. That's the top side of this chassis. Now, by the way, this chassis mounts in the bottom of the console. This is a big mahogany, sort of traditional console, a massive thing. And this chassis mounts in the bottom. This over here, I'm going to have to do my best to clean that up and paint it. Those two stickers, of course, I'll scan them with my handheld scanner. And that way I can make some duplicates. I'll remove the fuse holders and then I'll do the painting job. This over here I think I can live with. I can clean that up, make it work, and I think I can even do it without damaging those stickers, but I will scan them just in case ahead of time. And the tube sockets at first glance look like they're all in pretty good shape. I don't see any issues there. It's mostly with plating that failed, and maybe failed due to rust, or maybe it rusted due to failed plating. It's hard for me to tell. I used to do a lot of cars, and you'd sometimes look at a bumper and the chrome would be peeling off like that, and you really didn't know what made it happen. This is a Jensen speaker. I've been doing a little bit of work on it. Really, I've been trying to sort out this wiring. The wiring is a mess. it's a mess. So I've got to figure that out. And there's a lot going on there. And I'll show you why in just a minute. But it's a permanent magnet speaker. This is actually a plastic cap, so that's good. But whatever I do here to deal with this corrosion, if I wind up painting it, I'll have to paint this cap because this cap is painted. You see the inside is black. It was painted, so they need to match. And at some point, I believe I can see the ghost of a... Here you go. You can see the ghost of the Jensen logo. So I'll see if I can't get a Jensen sticker from Radio Days or someplace like that, and reinstall a sticker on that, and then clear lacquer over it. So there's that. That's going to be part of the challenge. Let me show you what's going on with this speaker other than that wiring. I mean, that, like I said, that wiring is a disaster. Let me show you what's going on otherwise with the speaker. As you can see, it's a coaxial speaker. It's got a baffle behind the high frequency speaker. That's what they call it on the schematic, high frequency and low frequency. And the low frequency speaker is got a steep curve there toward the center to make room for it. Everything here looks okay, except for the high frequency speaker is going to need some cone repairs. These are repairs I can do with this thing mounted on the speaker. I don't think I'll have to take this apart. Otherwise it looks good. Once I repair it, I'll hook up my frequency generator, my audio frequency generator, and run it through its paces to make sure that it's going to respond okay to everything. Make sure I don't get any buzzing or distortions at any particular frequency. I'll do all that after I've got it painted and so forth. So that the speaker won't be too bad, and I've gotten some of it done. I've plotted out what those wires are all about, but there's still a bit of challenge going on there. I'll have to work on. It's got a paper and wax 1 microfarad capacitor that's also mounted on it as well. I'll have to replace that. There's other things, you know, there's some resistors and such that are on there, some power resistors. It's got kind of an oddball output circuit. There were a couple of different record changers that you could order with these, and I think one of them was a Thorns, but this one doesn't have the Thorns. This one has the web core. And I'm not sure this was the original web core, but this is the web core we're going to prepare for this machine. Now, what I might do is try to talk them into like a dual or something like that where they'll get a little bit better record performance, but that's going to be up to them. If they want this in there, hey, it's their machine, we'll do it. I have a couple of nice duals. They're still idler wheel drive, but they're nice machines, and they'll sound better. But again, it's up to them. If they want this one, they get this one. I'm sure that Webster Chicago made this themselves, so we'll take a look underneath. I want to see how much it looks like a Voice of Music. I don't remember seeing it. Yeah, it's quite different from a Voice of Music, and it should be fun to work on. It's got a nice looking, it seems like a rather stout motor, so that'll be okay. I mean, the record changers, I'm not afraid of them. I can make this thing work no matter what. This will be a nice record changer. I'll clean it up and polish it up. Looks like it has a metal gear. That's a good thing. I don't like plastic or fiber gears. That's the one complaint I have about duals. They have a lot of duals with plastic gears. Looks real straightforward otherwise, so that shouldn't be any big deal. The control, the support arm right here. It's got a nice looking control. This tone arm looks similar to a Voice of Music, but it also looks different in its own way. It looks like it has a tetrad cartridge, or had one in there. So I'll replace that. That will, that's easy stuff. I do that all the time. Nothing really shocking on this, thank goodness, because the rest of it's quite a challenge. This mat here seems to still be in good shape, so I'll lift it up really carefully and I'll preserve it. And this will be nice. I'll polish all this up, and I'll touch this up with some gold paint, and I'll polish it, and you'll be able to tell it was been repaired, but it will look a lot better than it does. And all this stuff will be nice and clean and in good condition when I'm done. Alright, let's take a look under a couple of chassis. I think we'll start with this tuner chassis because I'm working on the amp chassis right now, and I want to show you the tuner chassis first, and then I'll get right to the amp chassis. The bottom for the tuner chassis it's covered, like a lot of nicer radios. It's got a bottom cover, so I'm going to go ahead and loosen that. Looks like there's about 4 screws on it, because the front and rear screws have been removed already, so I'll wind up replacing those, but I'll have that off and then I'll resume the video. Okay, take a look. There we go. This thing has that, I like it, but a lot of people don't, that wonderful smell that you get from very late 40s up into the 60s machines. There's something about that plastic coated wire that makes a smell that's very, very, very unique. Nothing else smells like it. Yet you smell this in almost all the electronics that's starting about the late 1940s all the way up into the 1970s. There's something about the composition of that wire makes it smell that way. And whenever I smell that smell, it makes me think of Japanese electronics that when I was a kid, getting a radio or a toy that had Japanese electronics, it had that smell. And all of my old tape recorders, all of them, all these things from that period have that sort of thing. Anyway, enough about the dang smell. I'm not going to go into too much detail on this, except to say that this is very clean. It should be, in terms of cleanliness, should be fine. I don't see a lot of wire replacing that's going to happen. This is after the nasty rubber-coated wire of the late 30s and just pre-war. Being a post-war machine, they had gotten to the better wire. So I think I'm going to be okay. Some paper and wax caps, no biggie there. I imagine there'll be some ceramic caps in there, some other oddball things. But what I am going to run into here is some very sensitive and delicate tuning equipment. This whole box is very well shielded. Remember that bottom cover was on here too. This is all FM tuner stuff. And this box is well shielded. The AM stuff is under the box on the top. It's well shielded. All of this should be, I'll have to be very careful with, but should be easy enough to take apart and do the work on. Once I sort it out, I'll just take my time. I've never done an 800B before, but you know, radio's a radio. Before I hit the amplifier, I remembered what that box was. That's part of this whole FM antenna arrangement. Check out that antenna. Is that funky or what? So I'm not sure if that box is part of a tank circuit that tunes this antenna or what. I will do some research and find out. But if I remember right, that's an FM antenna. Alright, here we are at the bottom side of the amplifier and power supply. And at first glance it looks pretty simple and clean. And it is clean, but it is not simple. There's a lot more going on in there, according to the schematic, than you might think. For one thing, it's got the whole 24-volt relay, power supply, and 24-volt delivery. We've got a choke right here. Lots of capacitors that are buried in these cans. The right way to do these, now, look, I disagree with all the folks that do the restuffing, and here's why. It's not because I'm lazy or I don't want to do it. Number one, I would have to charge a lot more. When I quoted this job, I did say, hey, I can restuff, but it's going to cost you quite a bit more. And they did not want the restuffing. But the reason I don't like it is because when you take this thing apart, say this electrolytic, you take this thing apart, you melt the solder. Here, let's look at this one. This one's not an electrolytic, but it's just got capacitors in it. But let's say you take this apart, all right? You melt the solder and you pull that bottom cover off. And then you have to heat this somehow, and you pluck the capacitors out if they're potted. If they're not potted, they'll lift right out, no big deal. But either way, you're going to take out the original capacitors. Now, what have you done? You've removed original construction of the radio. You've disturbed the construction of the box, and you've removed the capacitors, which was originally how it was made. Also, that you could put modern capacitors inside the box and resolder it. Now, some people say, well, purists, they like restuffing. Well, to me, that's not being a purist at all. Because what it's doing is it's replacing original construction with new construction. Rather than do that, and that's a permanent change. Rather than do that, I like to leave the original construction alone, leave it right where it is, do not disturb it, clip the wires or desolder them, pull the wires off, and use modern capacitors right alongside it. Now, can you see those things? Yeah, you can. And so that's where the purists don't like what I do, because they like it to look original. I would rather that it be historically as original as possible. And that means the original capacitors, however they're constructed, are still in there, so that if someone is interested later on and they want to see how they're done, they can open this up, pull that bottom cover off, and look at them. Maybe someone is going to do some sort of electronic archaeology on this thing in a couple hundred years, and that would be really interesting for them to see. If I've replaced them with modern caps, well, then they'll be a couple hundred years old, but they still won't be correct. So I'll leave that alone if I can. Another thing, these, I believe, are going to be mica caps. I'm not sure, though. They're in that size range where they could be mica, or they could be, you know, paper capacitors that are encased in plastic. I'll have to check it out, but I think these are micas. And where they're located, you know, hasn't told me anything yet, so I'll sort that part out. But, oh, I have to remember, the FM-IF is on this chassis. That's kind of weird, but it is. So they might be involved in the FM-IF. So that's what some of these cans on the top side of this thing are. So I will check all that out. But as I said, I intend to leave as much of the original construction as possible. This wire is in good shape. I don't even see a need to disturb it from its wrappings here. I'll leave these harnesses alone as much as I can. By the way, if you remember from my RCA, the way this wire is bound together is very similar to what I was doing with the RCA, so you see what I mean. When I said I was making it look vintage, that's what I meant. But I am going to leave this wire alone. It's been lacquered. It's in really pretty darn good condition. Look at the tube sockets, nice and clean. All right, so this is going to take me some time, guys. And I'm gonna give you a warning right now. This is going to take longer than the RCA took, but I intend for this to be a really nice machine when it's done. It won't look perfectly original, as I mentioned, with all the refinishing, but it's going to be a nice machine that will play well. The fellow that owns this, by the way, wants this to be set up with Bluetooth, so you know, I'll sort that out. That should be easy in a machine like this. I will look at that. I will look at of course I'll put a fuse in there, safety capacitors, all the usual stuff, and we'll see what we come up to, guys. I haven't yet found out if there are bad components or anything like that, so we're going to see that all together. Okay, so I'm going to close this video for now. It's already longer than I wanted it to be. I just wanted to give you guys kind of an idea what an 800B is going to look like. All right, guys, this is Michael. I'm in your Western Outpost in Salt Lake City. It's Christmas weekend, and I'm starting a new project. Hold on to your civvies, boys, because next time we're going to start recapping.